Joining me now is Alaska Senator Dan Sullivan, a member of the Senate Armed Services, Veterans Affairs, Environment and Public Works and Commerce, Science and Transportation Committees. Senator, good to see you.
Good
Thanks
morning,
very
Maria.
much for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be on the show. Thanks.
I want to get your take on the backdrop here. You have an op-ed in the Journal that you say Biden's UN General speech, the UNGA speech, is his last opportunity to stand up to Iran. Will he do it?
I don't think he'll do it at all. And, you know, this will probably be his last foreign policy address, major foreign policy address. And I think it's really important to ask the question, is the United States and our allies safer than we were 4 years ago? And, Maria, the answer is unequivocally no. And one of the big areas in which that is more apparent than ever is the appeasement of Iran. One of the hallmarks of the Biden-Harris administration has been appeasing Iran. And, you know, they had a really good record that they could have built on from the Trump administration, where we reestablished deterrence, put maximum sanctions on their energy sector, killed the terrorist Sullivan, and launched a peace initiative with the Abraham Accords. That's what Biden had when he came into office. He has squandered all of that, and deterrence with regard to Iran has collapsed. Heck, these guys, the Biden administration sanctions Alaska's oil and gas regime more than the Iranian oil and gas regime.
Yeah, I mean, look, Mike Pompeo has made the case, and Jack Keane has made the case many times on this program, that it's this failure of deterrence.
Yeah.
We have been unable to deter Iran. I mean, I'm questioning why it is that the U.S. issues a visa for the president of Iran after all that he has done, overseeing Hamas and Hezbollah terrorists and attacking Israel, and yet we give him a visa to come to the UN event?
Well, look, they are the largest state sponsor of terrorism in the world, by far. And the president and their leadership are terrorists. And your point is a really good one. When I mentioned that issue of oil and gas sanctions by the Trump administration, by the end of the Trump administration, the Iranians had about $4 billion in foreign reserves. As you know, Maria, that is not a lot. Right now, and their economy was in a free fall. Right now, Biden came in 3.5 years ago, lifts the sanctions, doesn't enforce the Trump sanctions, and now they have over $80 billion in foreign reserves from their oil exports. And what are they using that for? To your exact point, fund and train and equip Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis, and we are seeing chaos reign not only in the Middle East, but throughout the world. China, Russia, all the dictators are on the march and working together. That's the Biden-Harris record.
Yeah. Kamala Harris is reportedly, meanwhile, planning to visit the southern border this Friday. During a trip she's taking to Arizona, it comes as newly surfaced video shows then California Senator Harris protesting against any deporting of migrants at an L.A. parade in 2018. Watch this.
Up with education, down, down with deportation. Up with education, down, down with deportation. Up with education, down, down with deportation. Up with education, down, down with deportation.
What do you think about that? I mean, dozens of Republican lawmakers in the House and Senate are slamming the Biden-Harris administrations of the border and the handling of thousands of unaccompanied migrant kids. They've come to the U.S. on their watch, alleging that there's a cover-up of information underway. In this letter, they say that the administration has cut back on background checks, cut back on vetting of sponsors as part of an effort to speed up the process. I mean, Senator, you signed on to this letter. Tell us more.
Well, look, this is just more evidence that Kamala Harris is a far-left San Francisco open border Democrat. Maria, that is the fact. By the way, you mentioned you show your viewers this video. You know, she also in a Senate hearing drew parallels between ICE and the KKK. I mean, you want to talk about an insult to the men and women who are working hard to secure our borders? I mean, that's just remarkable. And so, yeah, I joined that letter. And one thing that I get asked a lot about, hey, Dan, why do you focus so much on the border? Alaska's 4,000 miles away from the open border. Well, look, this open border is a humanitarian national security disaster, but it's also a disaster in terms of fentanyl. In my state, Alaska now has the Sinaloa cartel literally dealing drugs in parts of Alaska. We've had the highest increase in fentanyl overdoses in the last 2 years. Alaska. And so this issue impacts every single state, every single American, even a great state like mine, which is really far from the border. And, if she's going to go there, it's about time, but it's too late. Her days are a complete failure, and this is a huge issue in this upcoming election.
I mean, it's got to be the reason that she doesn't want to do any interviews, because that's going to be the first question. Why did you allow 10 million illegals into America, and why haven't they been vetted? The fact that there were 2 million gotaways and, 350 people on the terrorist watch list encountered at the border trying to get in?
Yeah.
And what about the 50,000 Chinese nationals that have come in the last 2 years?
Right. I mean, you're making a great point, because a lot of people think, hey, the border is just kind of illegals from Mexico or Latin America. It's not. It is the gateway for every group in the world to come into America, particularly, as you mentioned, Chinese and groups and individuals that are on the terrorist watch list. So this is one of the biggest failures of Biden-Harris, and in particular Harris, because she was in charge of it. And again, it's impacting every single state, including mine. Alaskans are dying from fentanyl overdoses because of this open border.
Terrible. All right, real quick on the Rules Committee opting against voting for the bipartisan government funding bill last night after GOP opposition. Now House Republicans are expected to bring up the legislation for a floor vote later this week under a procedure known as suspension of rules. Senator, what does this mean? I mean, House Speaker Mike Johnson once again will have to rely on Democrats to pass once again another continuing resolution with 2/3 majority. Meanwhile, in the Senate, Kentucky Senator Rand Paul has signaled he'll ask for a vote on his budget plan, which would cut 6% of discretionary spending. Where are you on all of this?
Well, look, Maria, I'm going to obviously read it, but look, I'm where Rand Paul is, and I think Rand Paul's done a great job in our conference on highlighting the issues of the debt and the deficit, which exploded under Biden-Harris, particularly with their spending that drove inflation. But I think Rand Paul should get his amendment. This is why it's so important, by the way, that Republicans retake the Senate so we can control the agenda. Schumer will try to, I'm sure, try to shut down Rand Paul's ability to have an amendment. We should have amendment votes on all of these things, and particularly looking at the real challenges we have as a country with regard to the debt and deficit. So when I'm back in D.C., I'll read these bills, and, we'll be voting on them soon.
All right. We will be watching your work, Senator. Thanks very much for being here this morning.
Thanks, Maria.
Senator Dan Sullivan.